The first thing Margaret Wilson heard was the word amputation. It wasn't shouted or even spoken loudly, just murmured between two doctors who didn't realize she was awake. But it cut through the fog of medication like a blade. "Infection's spreading fast," said a man's voice. "If we wait another day, we risk sepsis." "We'll need family consent," another replied. "Her daughter's on the way." Margaret's eyelids fluttered. The light above her felt like ice. She tried to move her leg, the right one, but pain shot up through her body like lightning. Her breath caught. Not yet, she thought. Please, not yet. The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors. Outside, footsteps echoed down the corridor, the rhythm of a hospital that never slept. Then came the narrator's voice. Steady, warm, almost cinematic. "Before we go on, make sure you're subscribed to our channel." Stories like Margaret's remind us that medicine isn't just science, it's humanity. Now let's return to the moment she realized she might lose everything. Margaret opened her eyes fully now. The white ceiling, the stainless steel tray beside her bed, the faint smell of antiseptic. All too familiar. She had been in and out of hospitals for years, ever since the word diabetes had attached itself to her life like a shadow. But this time felt different. This time she was running out of chances. The door opened quietly. A man in his 30s entered, clipboard in hand, his expression focused but kind. "Good morning, Mrs. Wilson," he said. "I'm Dr. Bennett. You've been asleep for a few hours." Her voice came out hoarse. "I heard you talking about my leg." He hesitated. Honesty and compassion wrestled behind his eyes. "Yes, ma'am. The infection in your foot has reached the bone. We're fighting it, but your body's tired. The safest option might be—" "I know," she interrupted. "You want to cut it off." He didn't flinch, but his voice softened. "I want to save your life." Margaret turned her head toward the window. Beyond the glass, snow was falling, light, delicate flakes drifting over the parking lot. "What's the point of saving a life if you take the part that makes it worth walking through?" She whispered. Dr. Bennett said nothing. He'd learned that silence sometimes was the gentlest answer. Hours later, the door burst open with a gust of perfume and frustration. Her daughter, Diane, marched in, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I'm at St. Jude's," she snapped. "Yes, the surgery's today. No, she's not cooperating." She ended the call and exhaled sharply. "Mom, why are you doing this? They're trying to help you." Margaret looked at her. Same brown eyes, same stubborn jawline. "You call this help? They said you could die," Diane said, voice rising. "Do you understand that? You could die." Margaret smiled faintly. "Everyone dies, honey, but not everyone gets to choose how." Diane turned away, muttering under her breath. Dr. Bennett stepped in then, holding up a hand. "Let's take a breath, both of you. Mrs. Wilson, you don't have to decide right now. We can give you another 12 hours while we stabilize your blood sugar." Margaret nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the blanket covering her legs, one alive, one condemned. When they left her alone again, she reached for the rosary tucked under her pillow. The beads were warm from her touch, worn smooth by years of prayers that had gone unanswered. She closed her eyes, and in the dark, memories came. The smell of Sunday dinners, her late husband's laughter, the feel of soil beneath her hands when she still tended her garden. That was before the needles, before the pills, before she became a patient instead of a person. Night fell slowly over the hospital. Nurses whispered in the halls. Machines hummed like tired lullabies. Margaret stirred when she felt someone pull a chair closer. It was Dr. Bennett again, still in his scrubs, stubble shadowing his jaw. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Thought I'd check on you." She chuckled weakly. "Doctors don't sleep, do they?" "Not the good ones," he replied, smiling. Then gently, "Can I ask why you're so against the surgery? You fought harder than most to stay alive." Her eyes glistened. "Because I've seen what it does." He frowned. "You've known someone who—" "My husband," she said softly. "Vietnam. Lost his leg in the war. Never got over it. Said a man without both feet doesn't stand tall anymore. I spent 40 years watching him shrink inside his own shadow." Dr. Bennett nodded slowly, understanding dawning like a slow sunrise. "And you don't want to live that way." "I don't want to live remembering him that way. she said. He died angry. I don't want to die afraid. They sat in silence. The only sound was the rhythmic beep of her heart monitor, steady, defiant. After a while, the doctor stood. I can't promise miracles, Mrs. Wilson, but maybe there's another way. Something worth trying before we give up. She raised an eyebrow. You sound like you don't like giving up. He smiled faintly. I'm in medicine. It's a bad habit. As he left the room, Margaret watched him go, tall, calm, determined. For the first time in days, she felt something flicker inside her chest. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. Outside, snow kept falling over the city. Inside, under the hum of fluorescent lights, a stubborn old woman decided that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't done walking yet. Morning crept into the hospital through narrow blinds, washing the room in pale light. The monitors hummed softly. The smell of antiseptic lingered in the air. Margaret had barely slept. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of her husband, the way he used to roll up his pant leg and stare at the prosthetic like it was someone else's limb. When the door opened, she expected another nurse with another syringe. Instead, Dr. Bennett walked in carrying a folder and a cup of black coffee. He looked like he'd been awake all night. Morning, Mrs. Wilson, he said. How's the pain? It's there, she answered. But at least it reminds me I still have something left to feel. He smiled faintly and set the folder on her table. I've been thinking about what you told me, about your husband, about fear, and I think we might have another option. She raised an eyebrow. Does it involve keeping my leg? That's the goal, he said. There's a procedure we sometimes use in extreme cases. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy combined with localized antibiotic perfusion. It's experimental, but I've seen it help patients with severe diabetic infections before. Experimental, she repeated, her voice dry. That's doctor talk for risky. Maybe, he said, but less risky than cutting it off before we try. Before she could answer, the door burst open again. Diane, phone in hand, frustration already in her voice. I just talked to the attending surgeon. He said you're delaying the amputation. What's going on? Dr. Bennett straightened. I'm evaluating another approach. If we can control the infection, we might not need to amputate. Might? Diane snapped. Doctor, I know you mean well, but I can't watch her suffer for another week just because of a might. She's 76. She doesn't heal like she used to. Margaret cut in sharply. Don't talk about me like I'm not here. Diane froze, then sighed. Mom, I just want you alive. I am alive, Margaret said. You want me intact enough to sign insurance papers and look normal in family photos. That's not the same thing. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Dr. Bennett finally spoke. Let me run some tests this afternoon. Cultures, blood flow scans, sensitivity levels. If they come back positive, we try the treatment. If not, we revisit surgery. Diane crossed her arms. And if she gets worse before that? Then I'll take full responsibility, he said calmly. The daughter hesitated. She wasn't used to people standing up to her. Fine. You've got 48 hours. She stormed out, heels echoing down the corridor. Margaret looked at him. You just made an enemy. He smiled. Wouldn't be my first. By noon, the tests were underway. A technician positioned sensors along her leg, tracing the faint pulse of blood beneath thinning skin. Each beep of the Doppler monitor sounded like a heartbeat she wasn't ready to lose. In the imaging lab, Dr. Bennett studied the results. The infection was deep, dangerously close to the tibia, but not yet unstoppable. We've got a window, he murmured. His colleague, Dr. Shaw, frowned. You're really going to fight for this one? Yeah, Bennett said, because she's still fighting for herself. That afternoon, he returned to Margaret's room with a small rolling chamber. Sleek, metallic, almost alien-looking. This is the hyperbaric unit, he explained. You'll be inside for about 90 minutes. High-pressure oxygen can help your tissues heal faster and fight infection. Margaret peered at it warily. Looks like a fancy coffin. He grinned. Then you'll come out resurrected. She smirked despite herself. You always talk like that. Only when I'm nervous, he said. The first session began. As the machine sealed, Margaret felt her ears pop, the air thickening around her. Dr. Bennett's voice came through the speaker. You're doing great. Just keep breathing. Inside the chamber, time felt strange. Every inhale sounded amplified. Every heartbeat echoed in her chest. She thought of her husband again, the way he used to whisper that courage wasn't about not being afraid, but doing what scared you anyway. When the pressure dropped and the door opened, she exhaled shakily. "Still got both legs," she said. Bennett chuckled. "And both lungs. That's a good sign." The next day, small signs of change appeared. The swelling began to ease. The color of her foot shifted from grayish blue to faint pink. Even the nurses noticed. One of them, Maria, smiled as she checked the dressing. "You've got a stubborn doctor, Mrs. Wilson." Margaret smiled weakly. Guess he met his match. That evening, Diane returned. Her tone had softened, but suspicion still lingered. "They said you're improving." "I am," Margaret said. Diane sat down, hesitant. I don't understand why you'd risk everything to keep a leg." Margaret looked at her, voice steady. "Because I've already lost enough. My husband, my friends, my garden, my independence. I'm not giving up one more piece of myself because you're scared to watch me fight." Diane blinked, tears threatening. "That's not fair." "No," Margaret said gently. "It's the truth." Outside in the hallway, Dr. Bennett stood listening, unseen. He didn't take notes this time. He just watched a woman who'd been written off by everyone, including medicine itself, reclaim her right to choose. Later, in his office, he recorded his observation into the computer. Day 2. Patient response to hyperbaric therapy positive. Emotional resistance replaced by purpose. Sometimes the fight isn't against infection, it's against fear. He paused before saving the file, then added one more line. Note to self. Never underestimate a woman who still wants to walk. That night, the hospital lights dimmed again. Margaret drifted between sleep and wakefulness. In her dreams, she wasn't lying in bed. She was standing barefoot in her old garden, sunlight on her face, soil under her feet. And for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid to take a step forward. For 2 days, the hospital seemed to hold its breath. Margaret's numbers stabilized, the swelling had receded. Even Dr. Bennett allowed himself a flicker of optimism. Nurses whispered her name as if she were a quiet miracle in room 204. But on the third night, everything changed. It began with a tremor in her hand. Subtle, fleeting, like a bird's wing. Then came the fever. Within hours, her temperature spiked to 103 degrees, sweat soaking her pillow. The monitors beeped an urgent rhythm. The nurse hit the call button. "Dr. Bennett to room 204 now." He ran through the corridor, the hum of machines rising behind him. When he entered, the smell of infection hit him instantly. Sharp, metallic, unmistakable. The wound had reopened. "Damn it," he muttered. "She's septic." Margaret's eyes fluttered. "You said it was working," she whispered. "It was," he said, already checking her IV. "We just lost ground, that's all. Tell me the truth." He hesitated. "The infection's back, stronger this time." Her breathing grew ragged. "Then it's time, isn't it?" Before he could answer, the door burst open. Diane, pale and furious. "I told you this would happen, I told you." She spun toward him. "You played God with my mother's life." "Stop," Margaret croaked. "No, Mom," Diane snapped. "He gambled with you. With us." Dr. Bennett's tone stayed calm, but his voice trembled with fatigue. "If I hadn't fought, she'd have lost the leg already, and maybe her spirit too." Diane glared at him. "And now she might lose both." He stepped forward. "You think I don't know that? I've been here every night, watching, hoping." The monitor beeped faster, a shrill warning. Margaret gasped. "Please, both of you, stop fighting." They froze. The nurse entered, whispering urgently. "Dr. Bennett, her oxygen's dropping. Get the crash cart," he ordered. "Now." Within seconds, the room transformed, lights glaring, alarms blaring. Diane stood against the wall, trembling, as a swarm of nurses surrounded the bed. Dr. Bennett leaned over, eyes sharp, movements precise. "Epi ready. Clear airway. BP falling, 70/40. Margaret's body jerked once, then went still. Start compressions, Bennett said. The sound of hands pressing rhythmically against her chest echoed like thunder in Diane's ears. No, she whispered. Please, no. Come on, Margaret. Bennett murmured, voice cracking. You said you weren't done walking. Time fractured. A minute felt like a lifetime. Then a single tone pierced the chaos. Beep. A heartbeat. Bennett froze, eyes on the monitor. Beep. Beep. Slow. Steady. Miraculous. She's back, he whispered. The room exhaled all at once. The nurse turned off the alarm. Diane sank into a chair, sobbing. When the team left, Bennett stayed, his hand still on Margaret's wrist. Her pulse was weak, but there. Diane looked at him through tears. I don't know whether to thank you or hate you. Maybe both, he said quietly. Hours passed. The fever eased, but the damage was done. The infection had reached her knee. The only safe choice now was the one she'd feared most. That morning, Bennett sat beside her bed, exhaustion written in his face. Mrs. Wilson, he began gently, we're out of time. The infection's spreading faster than we can control. If we don't act now, I die, she finished for him. He nodded slowly. I wish there were another way. She studied him for a long time. You did everything you could. He swallowed hard. It's not fair. Fair? She said, smiling weakly. I've had 76 years. A good husband. A stubborn daughter. That's fair enough. Tears blurred his vision. You taught me something, you know. Oh? That sometimes saving someone doesn't mean changing their mind. It means standing next to them while they decide who they want to be. She closed her eyes. That sounds like something a good doctor would say. He smiled sadly. Then I must have learned it from a good patient. When Diane returned, Margaret reached for her hand. Honey, she said softly, if this is it, I need you to promise me something. Diane nodded, eyes red. Anything. Don't remember me for what I lose. Remember me for what I kept. What did you keep, Mom? Margaret smiled faintly. My say. Diane broke down, pressing her forehead to her mother's hand. I'm sorry. I just wanted to keep you safe. I know, Margaret whispered. Now let me keep myself. Outside the room, Dr. Bennett stared through the glass. He had seen hundreds of patients, but this one reminded him why medicine was unbearable and beautiful all at once. Then, as he turned to leave, a thought struck him. He rushed back to her chart, scanning the notes. One small line he'd missed before, localized necrosis, not systemic. His eyes widened. Maybe there was still a chance. He burst into the room. Wait, he said. I think we can save part of the limb. Diane looked up. What? I can remove the infected tissue and graft healthy skin from the thigh. It won't be perfect, but she'll keep her knee. She'll walk again. Margaret stared at him, stunned. After everything, he nodded, breathless. After everything. She looked at her daughter. Well, Diane, she said softly, I guess I'll still get to dance at your birthday after all. Diane laughed through tears. I'll hold you to that. Bennett grinned. You'd better rest, Mrs. Wilson. We've got work to do. The surgery lasted 4 hours. Outside, Diane paced the hallway, rosary clutched tight in her fist, the same one her mother had prayed with for years. Finally, the doors swung open. Dr. Bennett appeared, mask pulled down, eyes tired but bright. She's stable, he said. The infection's contained. We saved the leg. Diane gasped. Oh my God. Thank you. He smiled faintly. Don't thank me. Thank her. She never gave up. When Margaret woke, the first thing she saw was light filtering through the blinds. Her leg was bandaged, elevated, still there. She felt weak, but alive. Dr. Bennett entered quietly. Welcome back. She smiled faintly. Told you I wasn't done walking. He laughed. Remind me never to bet against you. Morning sunlight spilled into room 204 like a blessing. It wasn't the harsh, sterile light of surgery, but the warm kind. Soft, forgiving, alive. Margaret sat propped against her pillows, a thin blanket draped across her lap. The rhythmic hum of the machines was quieter now, less a warning and more a comfort. Her eyes fluttered open just as Dr. Bennett entered with his usual paper cup of coffee. "Good morning, Mrs. Wilson," he said, his voice carrying that same calm warmth she'd come to depend on. "How's the world looking today?" She smiled faintly. "Still here, still two-legged," he laughed. "Can't argue with results." Her gaze drifted toward the window. Beyond it, the first snow of winter was falling again, the same scene from the day she'd been admitted. "Funny," she murmured. "It looks exactly the same, but it doesn't feel the same." He pulled up a chair. "That's because you're not the same." She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "You know what I realized, Doctor?" "What's that?" "When people said, 'You'll lose your leg,' I thought they meant I'd lose part of my body. But what I was really afraid of losing was myself. The woman who still decides when she walks, and where." Dr. Bennett leaned forward. "And you didn't lose her." She smiled softly. "No. You helped me find her again." Later that day, the physical therapist arrived. A young woman named Sarah with a confident stride and kind eyes. "Ready to try standing, Mrs. Wilson?" she asked. Margaret glanced at her bandaged leg. "Ready as I'll ever be." With careful hands, Sarah and a nurse helped her to the edge of the bed. Her body trembled, her breathing quickened. Dr. Bennett stood silently nearby, arms crossed, watching every movement like a proud teacher. "Take your time," Sarah said. Margaret gripped the walker, her knuckles white. The floor felt impossibly far away, but she remembered her husband's voice years ago. Courage isn't not being afraid, it's taking the step anyway. She stood. The room seemed to hold its breath. The monitors beeped, steady and calm. Margaret let out a shaky laugh. "Well, look at that," she whispered. "Still works." Dr. Bennett grinned. "Told you." When she sat back down, exhausted but glowing, Diane entered the room carrying a small vase of daisies. "Mom," she said, smiling through tears. "You did it." Margaret's voice trembled. "No, we did." Diane set the flowers on the table and took her mother's hand. "I'm sorry for everything. For not listening, for treating you like you couldn't decide for yourself." Margaret squeezed her hand gently. "You were scared. I was too. But fear's not the enemy, sweetheart. It's the thing that reminds us what we still have to lose." Diane nodded, tears glistening. "Can I stay with you tonight?" "You'd better," Margaret said, smiling. "The nurses are tired of me bossing them around." Even Dr. Bennett laughed at that. That evening, the three of them, Margaret, Diane, and Dr. Bennett, sat in the dim hospital room, the blinds half open to the soft snow outside. It didn't feel like a hospital anymore. It felt like a living room lit by quiet gratitude. Diane asked gently, "Doctor, do you ever get tired of doing this?" He looked thoughtful. "Tired. Every day. But people like your mom, they remind me why it's worth it." Margaret chuckled. "You make it sound like I'm one of your success stories." He smiled. "You are. But not because of what we saved. Because of what you refused to lose." A few weeks later, Margaret walked out of St. Jude's Hospital with a cane in her right hand and her daughter beside her. Snow crunched under her shoes, cold air biting her cheeks. She stopped for a moment and looked back at the building. Tall, gray, unremarkable to most, but sacred to her now. Diane turned to her. "You okay?" Margaret nodded slowly. "Yeah, I just wanted to see it one more time. The place where I almost stopped walking, and decided not to." Diane smiled, slipping an arm around her mother. "Let's get you home." They walked slowly toward the parking lot. Each step hurt, but in a way that made her feel alive. Every ache, every breath was proof of something greater than survival. It was proof of will. A few days later, Dr. Bennett received a small envelope at his office. Inside was a note written in delicate, looping handwriting. "Dear Dr. Bennett, you taught me that healing isn't just fixing what's broken. It's reminding someone why they still matter. Thank you for not giving up on an old woman who still had something left to stand for. P.S. The garden behind my house is still waiting. Come by in the spring. I owe you tomatoes. Margaret Wilson." He smiled as he read it, then tucked the letter into his coat pocket. Later that night, as he walked past room 204, now occupied by another patient, he paused for a moment. The hum of machines was the same, the light just as cold, but something in the air felt different, softer, as if the room itself remembered. He whispered to no one in particular. "You kept your promise, Margaret." Outside, the snow had stopped. The city glowed beneath the moonlight, quiet, steady, alive. And somewhere out there, a 76-year-old woman was walking, one careful step at a time, her cane tapping softly against the earth. Each step was a heartbeat, each breath a victory. Because healing, she had learned, wasn't about what was taken. It was about what she chose to keep. Healing isn't just saving the body. It's giving someone a reason to keep walking.